Hey, Shalom. Want to begin by giving our glory and praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rachak, Kodash. Double honors to our beloved elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Shalom to the hopefully elect. And Shalom to all the Akim pushing this truth with sincerity. It's a brother Atazawan from the GMS Columbus, Ohio branch. Coming back again with another video through the Spirit. Lord willing, it is edifying. And pretty much through the Spirit, I had a few topics, on my mind. And I really just wanted to hit record through the Spirit, late night, just get off the plantation. All right. But all in all, okay, a certain quote, has been, just constantly coming to mind. All right. And it was pretty much, from a video that had surfaced. I believe a brother had posted it, or it may have been a clip. All right, I believe it's from a brother video I was watching. I'm not for sure which brother or elder it was. But ultimately, it was just concerning, the riots and, the protests and things that are, ultimately, scattered amongst Babylon, concerning, ICE and, just the different things that are happening in the world, or in America, if you will. And pretty much, it was from a veteran, a lady, an elderly lady. Okay, and, they was getting smacked with tear gas and, all types of shit, whatever. All right. And, and I quote, all right, she said, this is not America. Okay. She said, this is not America, and Lord willing, that may be the title of this, lesson here. Okay. And, when she said that, I was just thinking about a few scriptures through the Spirit. And, all in all, she's right. Okay. Because what, we ultimately see, all right, the state of America on a decline, a rapid decline. Okay. And in that, we are seeing the end of a civilization, right before our eyes. Division amongst the people. Okay. Sedition among men, real quick. Just go ahead and go that way. And second address. Okay. Second address 15 and 16. I start at 14. It says, woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Right. And, I was watching a funny ass video of this MAGA, all right, whatever you want to call him, MAGA supporter. Okay, he was in the midst of a anti-ICE, all right, protest. And, they went at it, and the MAGA guy, he ended up, whooping up like 4 or 5 people, you know what I'm saying, whatever. But, we ultimately see the division, the line is being drawn, all right, between the two parties, the Republicans and the Democrats, okay. Those who side with Trump, all right, so on and so forth. It's just a lot of division, okay, here in Babylon the Great. Which in that, of course, we always get the classic, Satan be divided against Satan, how can he stand? Or the kingdom divided in itself, how can it stand? Okay, you think of ancient times, concerning even our kingdom, Yasharallah, okay, the Israelites, after the fall of Solomon, okay, and the kingdom was rent, all right, split into two, all right, where, we now have the southern tribes and the northern tribes, okay. Okay, and then at that time you had Jeroboam, who was pretty much the chief of the northern tribes at that time. And then Rehoboam, the chief, all right, of the southern tribes concerning Judah, Benjamin, Levi. And then the 10 tribes, all right, concerning the northern tribes, or the 9, if you will. But all in all, in that, us being divided, our kingdom fell. Okay. It wasn't under one banner as intended, during the reign of David, where he brought the two tribes together and had everyone on one accord in unison. You see, likewise in Babylon the Great, that is what we are seeing. All right, the different Edomite tribes, Amalek, your regular Edomites, those who descend from, Esau, Edom, with him being in his blessing now, living in his kingdom and his prosperity. All right, we see his kingdom divided. And in that, his kingdom will not stand much longer. Okay. So, verses 16, it reads, it says, there shall be sedition among men and invading one another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. Right, sedition. Let's look at the word sedition real quick. All right. These are, things that we have to continue to bring out concerning the times. We are authorized, via Yahweh Shai, all right, to be watchmen, to feed the flock constantly, all right, as it is written in John the 21st chapter, when Yahweh Shai questioned Peter, thrice, all right, he told him to feed his sheep, all right, so it may be repetitive, it may be, tiresome sometime, but all in all, if you're locked in and you're engaged, you don't get tired, of hearing the fall of your enemies, seeing what's going on in the news, all right, so on and so forth. Anyway, sedition is a rebellion, uprising, revolt. You see, factious commotion in the state. And that's exactly what we are seeing in the world today. Everything that is happening, all right before our eyes, in the media, state to state, so on and so forth, is literally biblical prophecy, man. All right. And see, man, through the spirit, just meditating on, things and, shit like that, Jake, always, somewhat worrying, what I'm saying? It's just really the flesh, but, we got to tap into the spirit and really understand the times that we're living in and really rejoice, all right, and be grateful and thankful that we are literally seeing the fall of our enemies right before our eyes. All right, let's jump back to that Job 18. We are seeing this man's light being put out. Okay, again, this is not America, man. This is not the, the mediocre, white family, the 1955 Buick in the driveway, the white picket fence, the apple pie in the window, birds chirping, and all that shit is dead. All right, the light of the wicked is being put out. Let's read it. Job 18:5 says, the light of the wicked shall be put out, and the spark of his fire shall not shine. Right, or his left hand wisdom, so on and so forth. His light, him being in an illuminated state right now, it is being put out right before our eyes. Okay, let's go A and P. It says, indeed, the light of the wicked will be put out, and the flame of his fire will not shine. You see? So this man is growing dim. All right? He's growing dim. You see, this man's light is being put out. Let's get another precept. Proverbs 24 and 19. See? This is Proverbs 24. I'm going to start at 19. It says, fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked. Right? We know the wicked to be who? Esau, Edom. All right? The one that was born and ordained to be adverse to the ways of the Heavenly Father, to be an adversary, to be the devil, to be the physical embodiment of Satan, to manifest, satanic and demonic practices and a corrupt, ill rulership on the planet Earth. When you read 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, it taps into that. How, ultimately a man or a nation would desire to be as the Most High, okay, and their works, all right, or their working will be backed by Satan, okay? So Esau, Edom, is the wicked. No matter how he tries to cover it up, his works show forth that. Okay? And as it is written again in 2 Thessalonians, the 2nd chapter, this man is about to be taken out of the way. All right? Enough is enough. So this is Proverbs 24:19. It says, fret not thyself because of evil men. Right. And, just looking up that word fret. Goes into, being angry. All right. Well, ultimately, let's go to the BLB. It gives you more here. This is the word fret. In the BLB, what's that? Hara. To be hot, furious, burn, become angry, be kindled. See? To burn, kindle, to be angry with, be incensed, to burn, kindle, to heat oneself in vexation, right? You see, so ultimately, we see these devils prosper, all right? Or we have seen these devils prosper, okay? And in that, we can't get overly vexated, and, overheated, you see? All right, because, that this man is prospering in wickedness, man. That was what Ezra was going through. Okay, he was furious at the prosperity. Real quick, let me see if I can find that. At the prosperity of the wicked. It says 2nd Ezra is at the 3rd chapter. 2nd Ezra 3. All right, because he was just comparing the acts or the ways of the Israelites, okay, and the ways of the wicked. Okay, he was, producing his cause, why he felt the way he felt. Okay. Let me see, 2nd Ezra, the 3rd chapter. I'm gonna start at 26. It says in all things did even as Adam and all his generations had done, for they also had a wicked heart. Hold on, let me see. Come on. Keep continuing on, verse 27. It says, and so thou gavest thy city over into the hands of thine enemies, and their deeds then any better that inhabit Babylon, that they should therefore have the dominion over Zion? For when I came thither and had seen impieties, all right, or impities, which goes into reverence, or lack of reverence, it says without number, then my soul saw many evildoers in the 30th year, so that my heart failed me. Right, so we was vexed. Like, we seen all these wicked people, Babylon, arrayed and, prospering, so on and so forth. Us going through it. He's like, man, hold on, man. How the hell, when we was doing all our wickedness, we got punished and, what I'm saying, whooped up, and, these men, conquered us, so on and so forth, and they living even worse than we are, Verses 30, it says, for I have seen how thou sufferest them sinning, see, and hast spared wicked doers, and has destroyed thy people, and has preserved thine enemies, and has not signified it. I do not remember how this way may be left. Are they then of Babylon better than they of Zion? Or is there any other people that know of thee besides Israel? Or what generation have so believed thy covenants as Jacob? And yet their reward appeareth not, and their labor have no fruit. For I have gone here and there through the heathen, and I see that they flow in wealth, see, and think not upon thy commandments. Right. So, we're in a position where, we have watched this devil reach heights that are just, ridiculous. All right. This man literally owns the money. All right. Elaborate buildings and cities, so on and so forth. It just seems like this man is just prospering. through all this shit, through all the wickedness, so on and so forth, this man just, continues to increase. Okay? Verse 34 says, weigh thou therefore our wickedness now in the balance, and there's also that dwell in the world. And so shall thy name nowhere be found but in Israel, right? The Israelites ultimately possess the name of Yahweh Bahasham Yahushai and confess it, now in this day, beginning with the elect. Okay, but like I said, just bringing out this example, Ezra, was pretty much in that spirit, all right, of, fretting against the heathen, okay? But, once you read the fourth chapter, the angel's going to give them, understanding, all right, to a degree, you see? But, pretty much have to put him in his place, if you will. All right, but all in all, again, let's read Proverbs 24th chapter. Fret not thyself because of evil men, neither be thou envious at the wicked, right? So don't be envious at them. All right, yeah, they may be prospering, they may be doing, doing big things, so to speak, whatever the case may be. But all in all, don't envy them, don't be envious. Because what? Verse 20, for there shall be no reward to the evil man. The candle of the wicked shall be put out. See? Again, we're watching this man grow dim, So don't, get yourself tied up in, being mad, seeing Esau, drive Tesla trucks and fucking F-150s and, whatever the case may be, seeing, Trump do his thing and all these, elites and government officials living these lavish, plush lives, whatever. All right, because like I said, ultimately, this man's kingdom, this man's system is on his last leg, man. All right, let's read these two verses in the AMP. It reads, do not get upset because of evildoers, or be envious of the wicked, for there will be no future for the evil man. See? All right, and then, another thing that we have to take into account is that America, Babylon the Great, is on its 250th year, I believe, this year. All right? You see? And when you go into it, you look at the average time span of a kingdom, which I believe our beloved Apostle Tahar brought this out a while back. Okay? And I was watching another video by the beloved Elder Yashar Wamba. And, he was just doing a overview, or going into a video, by this man who was comparing, the state of Rome to the state of America, and how they are, falling, alongside each other, or how they fell alongside each other. The comparisons, so on and so forth. When you go into it, pretty much America's falling just like Rome fell. Okay, and we know that America, Babylon the Great, all right, is, in a sense, Rome 2.0. All right, it is Rome all over. Okay, when you go to Daniel, the 7th chapter, okay, speaks about, the four major empires. Okay, the Syrian Babylonian Empire, all right, the Medo-Persian Empire, the Greeks, all right, and the last beast going into Rome. Let's read Daniel 7:7. It says, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, right? It was diverse, via Senate House, all right? We may mention, at that time you had the plebeians and patricians, but now you have the Democrats, all right, and Republicans. It's the same system. They did away with kings, all right, or a monarchy, so to speak. all right, and set up a government based off a Senate House, all right, where, where they, they claim that the people, have authority over the government, or they make the rules, so on and so forth. But anyways, it says that were before it, and it had 10 horns, right? The 10 vassal states, all right, which, now link up to the European Union, you see? Okay, which, in today's age is more than 10, all right? And then when you read on, let me see, let's go to verse 8. It says, I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots, all right, the Brits, the French, and the Spanish. And behold, in this horn were eyes like the eyes of man, and a mouth speaking great things. All right. And that little horn ultimately is dealing with Babylon the Great, America. You see? So, a horn, a little horn stemmed from that fourth beast. All right. Which you want, the horn, it goes into power. All right. Let's jump down to verse 11. It says, I beheld then, because of the voice of great words, which the horn spake, I beheld even till the beast was slain, his body destroyed, and given to the burning flame. Right, and that's how Babylon the Great is going to be taken out via the thermonuclear missiles. All right, which are going to stem from Russia. All right, when you jump to Revelation the 13th chapter, real quick. We just rolling through the spirit. Revelation 13:1, it says, and I stood upon the sand of the sea, and saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. All right, continuing on, verses 2, it says, and the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Right, ultimately, going into, the different, power structures, empires, that stem from Esau, Edom, that leopard, beginning one of the beginning stages and phases of Esau's blessing, dealing with the Greeks, all right, or Alexander the Great, all right, and his feet were as the feet of a bear going into Russia. Okay, and we know the feet ultimately symbolizes the end of a thing. All right, so that bear, which is Russia, is going to be the nail in the coffin for Babylon the Great, America. All right, once Armageddon is sanctioned and comes forth. All right, World War III. We know Russia is going to be one of the heavy hitters. To help, shoot arrows at this place. All right, continuing on, it says, in his mouth as the mouth of a lion, going to Britain, and the dragon gave him his power, all right, dealing with Rome, and his seat and great authority, right? So this is how Babylon the Great had received his power, via Rome, following after that blueprint, all right, that dragon, all right. But like I said, ultimately, we are at the end of that phase, where this man, okay, is being taken out of the way. His country is in complete turmoil and anarchy, if you will. Now, we know, of course, things are still, afloat, so to speak. But all in all, this man's kingdom is just slowly diminishing, man. It's, decrepit, weakened. See, infrastructure is weak. People are weak. His dollar is weak. Like the scriptures speak about in Habakkuk, if you will, about this man lading himself with thick clay. He's printing money out of thin air. All right, etc., man. So, seeing all these things come to pass, we are to rejoice. Okay, and be grateful and thankful that we are witnessing our enemy being taken out, man, slowly but surely. get a precept for that. Sirach, the 25th chapter. And verses 7, it reads, it says, there be 9 things which I have judged in mine heart, to be happy, and the 10th I will utter with my tongue. A man that have joy of his children, and he that liveth to see the fall of his enemy. All right, who's our enemy? You read a list of those enemies, chiefly with chiefly with Esau, Edom. All right, again, it's Psalms 83rd chapter. All right, we read about, the enemies of Yasharallah, okay, the 18 nations, all right, pretty much, hate, the Israelites, conspire against them, so on and so forth, all right. But again, we're seeing this man's kingdom slowly diminish, and in that, we are to rejoice and be happy. Okay, so Lord willing, this was edifying to whoever may received it, giving all glory and praises to Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai Bahashem Rechak Shalom.